so I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 6:33 on March the 2nd of 2023. And the first thing is roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Villalobos is absent. Councilmember Bunker is absent. Councilmember Styler.
Here.
Councilmember McLeod.
Here.
Councilmember Clinton.
Here.
And I am Mayor Glaze. If you please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And to the Texas flag, honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state,
indivisible. One state under God, one and indivisible. Sorry.
That's all right. We'll give you a break.
Following you lead.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, we just thank you for our beautiful city. And Heavenly Father, as we go forth and conduct the city's business tonight, we just ask for your hand upon us and we just ask for your guidance. And Lord God, we always thank you for the gift of salvation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so we are going to have a presentation by Thomas Turk on the Northwest River Road grant, but he's running a little bit late. I just got a text. So I'll go ahead to the public comments. We received one via email today from Robert Marino. And his comment is, one of the items on the February 17th, 2023 agenda was a presentation of the police chief's profiling report. I was not able to attend that meeting, but it did remind me of one of the objectives the city had during the search for the new police chief. During the interview process for the police chief, one of the questions posed to the candidates was, what would the candidate do to foster healthy community police relationships? The city had expectations for the selected candidate to engage and interact with the community, and in particular, the Spanish-speaking community, to help bridge a perceived gap. I would like to hear about what efforts or initiatives have been undertaken in this area and what results have we seen. How would these efforts be communicated to the public? And so I've passed this public comment on to the chief. As the council, we're not allowed to interact with the audience during public comments. So he will address that at the next city council meeting. Okay, Bruce Jennings. Would you like to?
Hi, Bruce Jennings, 541 Riverbend Lane. Came to talk a little bit about drainage and flood concerns. First and foremost, our little group from Sunday evening wanted to thank those individuals that were able to come and support and ask questions and participate in the discussion. I know you were there as individuals, can't come to something like that as a city council, but we really do appreciate faces in the room. I think our little email contact list now is up to 60 individuals. And so that's really great to support that. In fact, we're asking, consider, I know this it's on your agenda, you can't do any action steps tonight, but consider drafting a statement of concern and support about the issues that are happening, please. Just planting a seed there. Also, we would like to ask, consider meeting with San Marcos's planning and zoning about what's going on in the area and how it's going to impact other communities, not just San Marcos. The Smart Terminal is 2,000 acres. It's massive. If you could, bear with us. We're still working on a community meeting with the developers. I believe I told you last time we got together that PNC out of San Marcos insisted that the developers of the Smart Terminal meet with community residents and explain to them what their project is going to be. We're having ongoing discussion about the format of that because they kind of want this 4 hours open house, come and go kind of thing. And we kind of like want to sit down and hear a presentation of what their plan is, so we can formulate our questions regarding that. But we'd like to invite y'all to come to that as we get it going. We want y'all to know about it. I had an interesting conversation with our County Commissioner, Ed Theriot, this morning. He says he actually has a good contact that's responsible with engineering with TxDOT. And because I'd kind of like a meeting about what the heck's going on with all the drainage that they're putting into these creeks that come through about 100 families' properties and come to the river down here. Because I'm seeing, like today, there's a guy with a pump, pushing water into the ravine. And I'm kind of looking at this going, yeah, that's great, because they're going to silt up. But I'm asking, Ed's going to follow up with this engineer because I want to know about, have they estimated the capacity of the creeks? Have they estimated how to do retention and filtration of the runoff down there? What's the impact of the smart terminal going to be on those creeks? Because they're only planning for 1.5 inches of rainfall with 70% impervious cover. So that's a big deal. But if we can establish a meeting with TxDOT, or if y'all would like to ask TxDOT to come do a presentation about all the improvements that are going on with Highway 80, because my understanding is, they're going to bring that, continue it down this way. It'd be nice to know that we're all on the same page about what TxDOT is doing on Highway 80 and what they're going to do about drainage. And then lastly, I wanted to ask, and you can tell me this later, I know you can't tell me a lot of stuff up here while I'm doing this, but have any of y'all had any experience with the Texas Water Development Board when it comes to industrial projects? And if so, I'll speak to you later, but the Texas Water Development Board, I've been told, can oversee any kind of industrial project that may harm water that's owned by the state of Texas. And all the flow that seeps between the two rivers under that smart terminal property comes out in springs along the creeks. I guarantee you the state of Texas will say they own the water. That's where they came down to my neighborhood and told us we had to tear a dam out that'd been there for 50 years. Yeah, because we have an HOA, and HOAs can't have a dam on a creek. A resident property owner with cattle can have a dam on a creek, but apparently an HOA can't. So little distinction there, even though it was there long before us. Anyways, flood blew it out, so no big deal. But that's my spiel. Any question for me? Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Mary Beth Harper?
I'm making to y'all tonight as a private citizen, not for the library. And I appreciate Mr. Jennings' statements about the smart terminal. It was a huge meeting last Sunday, and I appreciate the council members that were there. One of the most interesting graphics I saw at that presentation was the size of this smart terminal that they have now, not the original one, but the current smart terminal compared to the size of the city of San Marcos. And it's a huge area. And Martindale would be a little bitty tiny little point in this entire area that they have. The original smart terminal was only a little over 800 acres. And it was annexed into the city of San Marcos back in 2019. Now the current one is over 2,000 acres. And it runs along 1984 for Reeville and around Reeville and along 142, Highway 142. Anyway, it is Quail Run also. So it has expanded tremendously. And the developer wants to annex this land into San Marcos, right outside of Martindale city limits, and also to change the zoning to heavy industry. And this heavy industry zoning over this whole entire 2,000 acres They want 70% impervious cover, and y'all already have an impervious cover limit. That means more concrete, more runoff, and also drainage into the San Marcos River. And again, I appreciate Mr. Jennings mentioning all the streams and creeks and stuff that do run into the San Marcos River. And I would request that the city of Martindale write a resolution to oppose the heavy industry zoning. We can't oppose the annexation, but anyway, if we can oppose the heavy industry zoning over this whole entire area, this acreage, if y'all could do that. The planning and zoning, San Marcos Planning and Zoning, and also the San Marcos City Council are beginning to meet, and we'll have final votes on that in the next month or so. So anyway, this needs to get going. Okay, that's the first item there about the smart terminal. And I've been here before many, many years ago talking about the smart terminal. Okay, the second item is the paid parking in the parks. I'm going to vote on that tonight, I guess. Okay, there's a huge lack of communication that comes from City Hall out to the citizens. Lack of communication. And so if you vote on this, the citizens pay for parking, or the people around in this area have to pay for parking in these parks, you're going to have to inform everybody about this ahead of time. And I would suggest that y'all have like a month or two, if you do pass the, and I don't agree with the paying for parking in these parks. The people already pay big property taxes here in town. I would suggest that y'all wait until May 2nd to enter, and then another month, anyway, May 2nd to have the paid parking, and then even possibly even a month later to start enforcing the paid parking. And I don't know how you get people to pay for it. First of all, many citizens don't have the technology to download the app. Yeah, I think Sam says about app on your phone. My phone, and also a lot of citizens in this town have very little technology. And also, you're going to have people parking along the streets on 1979 to avoid having to pay for parks, and that is dangerous for families, for little children, elderly people. Anyway, please do not have parking where you have to pay for parking. If you had improvements where it would be worthwhile, but right now you got a gravel parking lot and a couple of other kind of doodads down there, and that's about it. But anyway, you do need help. I understand trying to raise revenue to pay for stuff. You need to have grants to have improvements, and then once you had like a top line park, okay, then have paid parking. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary
Thank
Lynn. Okay, we're still waiting for Mr. Turk.
He's here, ma'am. He's here.
Oh, I didn't see you. Okay, we'll go on with that presentation.
Hello, everybody. I feel like I'm jumping out of the stage. Yes, my name is Tom Turk. I'm one of the principals at Freeboard Turk Engineering Group. We are doing the engineering for the Northwest River Road project. I'm here to give you an update as to where we are and where we're going and when we're going to get this thing under construction. So first, the first slide there, there we go. Just want to kind of go over the scope of work again for those of you who may not know. So we are going to construct a major drainage system in Northwest River Road. The outfall to that system will be in the ravine between the two cemeteries. We'll have two 7x4 box culverts that will go basically down the middle of Northwest River Road. And then up there right before we get into the two curves, we'll take in a ditch that comes from, Mayor, how are you doing? Taking a ditch that comes from Highway 90 through the farm field there. So we'll intercept that water, put it into the culvert system and on out. And then we have a storm drain system in the S curves that basically takes all that water that comes off the field, puts it into the same culvert system and drains it out. That drainage system and box culverts is like major open heart surgery. So we're basically going to be destroying everything that's at the surface. So we're going to be constructing a new 8-inch water line. We're going to build a new 24-foot wide curved asphalt street. That's pretty much a summary of the improvements. The improvements are from Lockhart Street all the way through the double S curves and probably at the mayor's house. So that's the scope of work. Any questions on the scope of work before I go on? Okay?
I had a question about the box culverts. So you
Yes.
mentioned those. Are those going to be right there where the driveway of the schoolhouse is then, or off to the side of the road?
They stop short of the driveway going into the schoolhouse. They go down the center of the road and they make a turn into the cemeteries before you get to the schoolhouse.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Cindy Woolery. She is a direct descendant from John Creighton,
Oh,
and she was also instrumental with the rest of the Caldwell County Historic Commission in putting the plaque of the cemetery
I saw that.
plaque
That's nice,
in the cemetery. And so I specifically invited her to come this evening
Awesome.
to
Awesome.
represent.
Yeah, I have a slide coming up about the environmental work where we talk about the cemetery.
I'm concerned.
So what have we done so far? We have done a whole bunch of engineering. We've got our surveying, geotechnical investigation, our utility mapping. We came to you with a number of options about how you could build this system. That's the value engineering process. Then we came up with a preliminary set of plans that we submitted to the city, I think 2 or 3 months ago. We also produced the surveys in which the city and Langford will use to acquire the parcels that we need to construct the project. Next slide. So what are we doing now? We are working on the final plans and construction documents. We are continuing the utility coordination process, and that process is basically where we're interacting with the utility companies that own facilities on Northwest River Road. That's Frontier owns some underground communications, Martindale, Water Supply Corp. Water line, Blue Bonnet, the electric lines. Everybody is engaging. Everybody's been very cooperative. That process is going extremely well. We were very apprehensive about Frontier's facilities early on, but they've been really good to work with, and they're basically going to replace their facilities from one end to the other. And they're going to move things out of the way so we can get our storm drain system in. So I can't be more pleased about how the utility coordinating process is going. Langford is working on the environmental, trying to get environmental cleared. So of significance is the archaeological survey we did inside the cemeteries. That was completed 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the report that Langford got that was forwarded on to me was that they didn't find anything of particular concern in the area that we're going to be constructing things. That was really good news. We were all very worried that we would find something that was historic and important there in the area that we're working. Apparently, they did not, and they believe that the report that when it's done, it gets sent to the historical commission, will be looked on favorably, and they believe that they're going to be able to get the clearances that we're expecting. So everything from the environmental side of things appears to be going better than expected. I'll put it that way. Let me stop here and ask you, do you have any questions or concerns that you want to raise?
I would really like to see where that 7x4, that's what's going down that ravine, correct?
Yes.
Enter into that ravine.
Yeah. So this little factoid here, the ravine is actually the division between the 2 cemeteries.
Correct.
The one to the east is Martindale City Cemetery, and then to the west is Creighton. The ravine is a natural waterway, so basically our box culverts are basically centered on that ravine. So we have we're going to be asking for easements on both sides of the ravine because we've got got to construct a box culvert. So it affects both cemeteries. Obviously, Creighton is historic. And so we did our best to ask for as little easement as possible, but we have to have enough to not only construct it, but enable the city to maintain it in the future. So we thought long and hard about what we asked for. We tried to minimize that the best we could, but we do need some, and it is pretty pervasive. We're going to be clearing the trees down there, building concrete structures, and that's what we got to do. But the fact that they didn't find anything that they were particularly worried about was a great relief to us.
Who signs off on the easement authorization? Who owns the cemetery?
Descendants of John Creighton and his girl family.
Is there a board?
No, there's not. So what, from center line, how invasive will it be going up into the Creighton's rural cemetery?
Well, I've got a sketch on my computer. I wish I had it with me. Don't think that we get too far out of what I would call the bank. You know, if you go into the Creighton Cemetery, there's the ravine on the left, and it's very wooded, and you have that grass area. We don't get too far into that grass area at all. We try to contain everything kind of within the ravine. I think we have a little bit of easement up on where it's flat, so the city can get vehicles in there in the future. But we try to be as soft with our footprints as possible.
So how will the drain, the runoff, will it be flat at that point? Over the top of the 4x7 concrete? Will it be flat then from that point on, all the way down to the river?
It will discharge into the ravine about, I want to say about 100 feet down from the current road. So it will flow right into the ravine as it exists.
Will that be covered with soil or what?
Yeah,
How is that?
so the first 100 feet or so is armored with concrete riprap. You have a very large retaining wall. You have the box culverts that come through it. And then you have about a 50-foot concrete riprap transition into the natural cross-section of the ravine. And we have dissipation structures within that riprap to slow the water down, so it's not going any faster than it is today.
Creating more washout.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Yes, sir.
Can I recommend that you actually go and mark that land where you're gonna put that easement so that people can see it? Like I'm on the road and I want to know where you're going to take the easement. I'd like you to, now you have states that are on the properties right now. I have no idea what they mean. I've looked at a map, but you know, that's one thing to see what's on a plat, but what is actually done is going to be a totally different thing.
Yeah,
So you're asking a question, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You have
Absolutely.
a great picture of what you're talking about.
I believe they have been staked. If they haven't, I'll make sure that it is.
Where it's legible to a lay person like myself.
Um, I sent you a picture of that months ago. You may be able to recall it.
I'll look. Look as we go through the slides, and if we get there, we'll get.
But you have a very good question about Creighton's and who owns it and who's going to give these. If that's for Langford, they're doing the right of acquisition. That'd be their chore,
Sure.
so to speak, to reach out to whoever owns it and acquire that property and help the city close on that. So I don't have the answer to that question, but I know it may be a bit of a chore to get that done. Yes.
As far as the protection goes of the culvert adjacent to the cemetery, is there some aesthetically pleasing fencing so it doesn't look like an industrial culvert next to a cemetery? I mean, some kind of fencing. I mean, you have to protect the culvert because it's all rock and riff raff and all that, unless it's not going to be fenced in. But I would like to see some aesthetically pleasing fencing that's more conducive to being adjacent to a cemetery.
We'd be more than happy to put fencing into the project.
I mean, are you calling for it though?
Not at this time, no, but
Oh, well, if you aren't, then that's perhaps fine then, if you aren't.
it's entirely up to you. And if you want fencing, if you'll tell me what kind of fencing that you would enjoy seeing, we'll be happy to.
Okay,
put it
well,
in
maybe-
a project and spec it out.
Well, I do know, excuse me.
Yeah.
I do know that there is a group of homeschool children and their families that go in there in our cemetery on certain days.
Yeah.
I would not want them to be, get into the rocks, so to speak.
Now, keep in mind, the easement that we're acquiring does not go down the entire length of the Creighton Cemetery property. So we could put a fence in for the first 100 feet, which is the limits of our easement, but beyond that, there would be nothing.
Mhm.
Unless, you guys wanted to work something out with the cemetery and extend it, whatever you guys want to do,
Mhm.
we'd be happy to accommodate you.
Thank
And I
you.
believe we want to protect our signs and,
Your signs will be unaffected. I drove by shortly after the mayor told me, I looked at it, it's well outside anything that we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
We're not messing with your sign.
What side of the road, what side of your easement would that sign end up on?
It would be on the right or the west side of the easement.
On the
Yeah.
Creighton Cemetery side or on the
Creighton.
further?
Your sign is kind of up on the hill a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're
I'm
not
talking
even,
about this sign right here.
oh, that sign.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
You're
thought
talking
about the new
historical
sign.
marker.
So this sign will be affected by construction and we'll be more than happy to have it relocated and placed anywhere you would like.
Yes, we do want it protected, so,
Where would you like it?
well, I have to go look.
Okay, yeah, if you'll
I
if you'll
can't
just
tell
let
you
us
that
know.
without knowing where your easement's going.
We'll have the contractor gingerly take it down and he can hand it to you or whoever operates the cemetery and let them do it, or we can have the contractor reinstall it, whatever you guys want.
Sure.
Any other questions on environment? All right, next slide. So what's next? This is 5 or 6 bullets on what I would call the critical path activities. We've got to get environmental clearance, or as Langford puts it, the authorization to use grant funds before we can go out and acquire the right of way. The right of way acquisition is very critical to this project. We can't go to bid without it, without all the right of way. And obviously, we can't construct the project unless we have the right of way. So it's a critical path. If that task runs long, it affects everything else downstream. So if that goes 2 months into August, that pushes out the bid, it pushes out the advertisement, it pushes out the construction. So that's why it's called a critical path. So that's really, really important. We're working on the bid and construction documents. We plan to have a substantial set of bid and construction documents at the end of April, but frankly, we can't do much until the right-of-way is acquired. Typically, when we do go out and acquire right-of-way, there's interaction with the landowners and negotiations, and sometimes there's little changes to our plans. So we don't want to actually finish the plans until the right-of-way process is substantially complete. And we'll be at 95%. It'll be pretty easy to finish out the plan. So that's going pretty well. If everything falls into place, we'll advertise bid and award for about 2 or 3 months. That'll culminate in September, where you'll be selecting a contractor. And then we've scheduled some time in there for what I call a pre-construction utility relocation phase. That gives the utility companies a little time before our contractor hits the ground to go in there and make their final adjustments in their utilities. We may not need it, I don't know, but we're planning on that at this point. Then hopefully in October, we'll be in construction. We're planning on about 18 months, I believe. Hopefully that'll go sooner. I got a feeling it's probably gonna go sooner than that. I certainly hope so. It's real important to pick a contractor who wants to get in and out.
So that October date is doable, your opinion?
It's
Depends on
doable.
a lot of variables. I understand.
Again, I think the right of way is the biggest schedule risk task. We've got 2 or 3 months plugged in there to get that done. That's the schedule that came from Langford. But I've worked on a number of projects where right of way acquisition was part of the projects, and you just never know. That's what it looks like today. Let's see, next slide. And Mayor, I wasn't sure if you wanted to talk about this, but I don't know if everybody knows it. The city of Martindale is going to get another $2.5 million out of this program. It's called a MOD. I'm not sure exactly what MOD stands for. But since we learned that, 2-3 months ago, we've been talking internally about what we might do with that money. There's several projects that are being considered. No decisions made, still thinking. I don't know if you want to add to that, but.
What are the restrictions?
What are the restrictions? It's basically a continuation of the same program, you just have more money.
More flood control?
You can do more flood control. You can build an evacuation center. There's pretty wide open, yeah. Now, remember, because of inflation, we had to scale back this project. You could also take that $2.5 million and commit to doing the project as it was originally scoped. So that's an option too. That's a fairly important decision that's got to be made in the next 6 months or so. Can I answer anybody's questions?
Money on demand, right?
It could be, I don't remember what that stands for. But no, we've been having fun on this job. It's got some, us nerdy engineers, we like nasty, challenging projects, and this has got a few. But this
Nasty.
this project has gone better than we anticipated, and the city's been really great to work with. The Pete's been great to work with. So it's been a good project so far. Yes, sir.
I know in some states they have to have a historian or archaeologist whenever they're near older sites. But of course, I don't know if we have anything like that. But would there be an availability for somebody with construction supervision to like walk the property with some of the cemetery support folks and show, because some machines are a lot bigger than others, and to look at, how they're gonna go in there, because put these people's minds at rest, as far as how large of a machine you're taking in there and how you're gonna get in and out of there without disturbing the actual residents of the cemetery, if you would. But,
So that is likely to be, and we're expecting that to be a requirement that comes out of the environmental process.
Yeah.
The Texas Historical Commission may very well say, as a condition of its approvals, we want to make sure that we have a standby archaeologist and somebody that is watching things as we're constructing in their area, just in case something of importance is encountered. So, we're expecting to do that.
I don't know, some of these folks may know, but just in the last few months over in Staples, a cemetery was discovered that had been just totally overgrown and forgotten. And it was a freedmen's slave, freed slave, and they found foundation work for the school that was there and a church that was on that property also. And they formed a organization board in a nonprofit, and they were able to pursue that And I would really strongly consider, y'all trying to do that.
It's
Oh, I know.
24-foot wide road.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the current width of River Road?
Depends on where you are, but it's roughly 18 feet-ish.
Okay, what speed limit would?
We're not changing the speed limit. It's gonna be 25, I think. It's 25, right?
Is there 30 on part of it?
It's 25.
25.
Till
the corner.
Till the corner.
it's 30 after that.
You okay with that? No, I mean, there were concerns about, we're gonna improve the road and that people would be, able to go a lot faster.
Okay, and the easement would come from both sides of the road, not just.
The right of way acquisition is coming from only one side and it's on the left, the riverside. The
Left
riverside.
going west.
Yeah, I'm sorry, headed west, it's on the left, but it's on the riverside. And we would have loved to take right away off of both sides, nice and even, everybody suffers kind of thing. But the way this project worked out, it made much more sense just to take parcels off of the riverside. So on the north side of the road, the opposite the river, there is a substantial channel there that we have to restore because our project only conveys a 10-year storm. So there's larger storms that are going to come through that this system's not going to be able to handle. And we still need that ditch.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing is all of Frontier's communication cables, there's 3 of them, follow that side of the road. And so we really couldn't do much with that side of the road and everything had to be done on the south side, unfortunately. Any other questions? Well, I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
for-
you very much.
for the feedback and interaction. It's always good for us to hear. So, all right.
Thank
Do you need me anymore?
And we'll find that picture of the alluvial.
Oh, were you
And get
able to
it
find it?
to,
No, I wasn't.
I've seen it. I was looking for it today.
It does look like it. Can you forward it to Sherry?
So he can give it back.
We,
Well, so he can
Well, we-
put it up on the screen.
we'll have an opportunity here in the next, maybe month or two, right, for another opportunity to give an update once we start doing the acquisitions. We'll have a town hall type event, where we'll be able to have more information put out.
Can you email that to him?
I don't have his email there.
Here, let me have your phone. I'll take a picture of it. I'll send it to Sherry and we can put it up on the screen. For everybody to see. How about that?
You might just be able to drop it.
I emailed it to her earlier.
We discussed it back in November when we had our
Yeah.
work on.
Jared, it's coming to you.
Can you forward that to mine? Since I'm still on
I'll put that.
You want email?
Yeah.
Yes.
You dropped your phone.
Yeah,
Recently?
yeah, I got insurance, so we get a new phone out of the deal. Don't do it. What, don't drop it? Don't drop
We'll see how long it takes to get from here to there. After going around the world a couple of times with the internet.
Did you have that transfer the same from the?
Don't do that.
Place you found. Does it feel-
I'm paying $10 a month for years.
She must be on my 10.
For my dog.
Hello?
Yeah.
For a while there. Well, anyway.
Yeah, we'll-
you can show it.
Yeah, and then, we're gonna have opportunities for, public participation once we start that right away acquisition process too. So hopefully the last time we'll have an opportunity to review that information.
And also, we'll come back before construction and give everybody an opportunity to see how the project's going to be constructed, and particularly how we're going to manage traffic. That's going to affect everybody. But the bottom line is, you'll always have access to your property. You may be riding on dirt roads for a while. You'll always have access. There will be dirt, there'll be dust, there'll be inconvenience, but we'll.
It'd be nice if, before you had the drawing up on the board, that'd be a nice thing for everybody to see it.
Yeah, I came a few months ago and
Yeah,
showed you the
that's
different phases and
Yeah, that'd be
stages.
good for everybody
Yeah.
to see again.
That fundamentally has not changed, so.
Okay, thank you.
But hopefully that'll reduce some of the complaints during construction.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
it, folks.
Thanks,
Good to
Mr.
see you
Turk.
all.
thank
Have
you
a good
very
one.
much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to my report. And so last month in February, because of the ice storm, we had canceled the meeting, and it was Black History Month. So I have a proclamation about Black History Month. And February is observed as Black History Month. In honor of that, here are 5 famous Black Christians in history we should all know about. One is Harry Hosier. Harry Hosier was born a slave, but was a freedman in Maryland around the end of the Revolutionary War. He was such an influential preacher, that he is the first Black preacher we have on record who preached to white audiences, thus laying the foundations of the cultural bridge between white and Black Americans. And that was 1750 to 1809 that he lived. Another person was Absalom Jones. Jones was the first Black priest ordained by the Episcopal Church and went on to found the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME denomination, which still exists to this day. He was an avid abolitionist who petitioned Congress about ending slavery and spent his time helping those in need. The third one that I picked out was Sojourner Truth, 1797 to 1883. Sojourner Truth is a name you may have heard about but don't know much about. She was an avid abolitionist and an activist of women's rights, which March is Women's History Month. So we'll bridge that gap. Her story helped support the case against slavery in the publication, The Narrative of Sojourner Truth, a Northern Slave. The next one I picked was Harriet Tubman, 1822 to 1913. Many of us are familiar with Tubman's work on helping to free hundreds of slaves through the Underground Railroad network. However, what is less known is that she was an avid Christian who credited all of her work to God's providence. She claimed she was able to do what she did because she had dreams that she interpreted as revelations from God. The fifth one I picked was Thomas Dorsey, who we all have heard about, 1899 to 1993. Ever heard Black gospel music? Thomas Dorsey is the man you can thank for it. He was the son of a minister and a music teacher, so he grew up ingrained with faith and music. The music he helped pioneer has been a staple among Black Christians who worship God through song. These are a few of the famous Black Christian leaders in history. For example, we didn't include Martin Luther King Jr., who was a pastor himself, in this list because most people have heard of him, but he certainly deserves his place on the list. The list could go on, but that would take ages to read because there are a lot of Black Christian leaders you should know about. We encourage you to do some further research, especially as we continue to honor Black History Month. And do hereby call upon the citizens of Martindale to honor Black History Month. I did want to talk about, just for a second, about a book that I had read at the beginning of February. And I love the books by Brian Kilmeade. He does history books. And this one was called The President and the Freedom Fighter. You may have seen it. It's about President Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. I really had never read that much about Frederick Douglass, and I really gained a new appreciation for him. He was quite a statesman. He was also a preacher, and he also preached to Black and white audiences. So that was that resolution. The next resolution that I was asked to do came from Michaela Aranda from the Hayes Caldwell Women's Center. February is Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we did also do a proclamation for that. A proclamation by the city of Martindale, Texas, relating to the Dating Violence Awareness Month to stand against domestic violence and in support of survivors. Whereas 1 in 3 adolescents is a victim of physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. And whereas the effects of dating violence impact youth in all communities and cuts across economic, racial, gender, and societal barriers. And whereas respectful, supportive, and nonviolent relationships are key to safety, health, and academic success. And whereas by providing teens and young adults with education about healthy relationships and relationship skills, and by changing attitudes that support violence, and by changing attitudes, that something doesn't seem right in that sentence. We recognize that dating violence can be prevented. Whereas families, friends, teachers, coaches, faith leaders, community members, and other important people in young people's lives have the power to influence youth in positive ways. And whereas last year, HCWC provided 55 dating violence prevention and healthy relationship presentations to 3,394 teens and young adults. And whereas we must work together to raise awareness and promote healthy dating relationships with activities and conversations about mutually respectful and nonviolent relationships in our homes, schools, and communities. Now, therefore, I, Catherine Glaze, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Martindale, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2023 as Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month for teens and young adults, and do hereby call upon the citizens of Martindale to work together to raise awareness and prevent dating violence in our community and beyond. Are you all representatives? Oh, thank you for coming.
You know, thank you all for the support that you all give the center.
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome. So I can sign this, and Adrian can sign this, and you can take it with you if you would like.
Yes, that would be great.
Thank you. I didn't give you much warning that we were going to go ahead and do this.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you
for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you all for the work you do.
Thank you.
Okay. So I was going to do a recap of the workshop that we had February 11th, but I think since we're going to be talking about that at 4.6, a little bit later, that I'll just go ahead and skip that for now, and we'll go on to the Chief of Police report.
Losing everybody.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, we're just-
Yeah, I know, we're just getting, not even halfway done.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Hi.
Just want to go over our January stats. We didn't get to put them on last month because of the racial profiling report. But in January, we had 176 citations issued, 122 citation violations, 54 warnings. Our patrol activities, we had 10 assist the county, 21 calls for service, 20 motorist assist, crash reports, we had 2. And on that last part is what we wrote all the citations for. We also had 6 animal calls. I know the animal calls are important. I think we caught the one dog that was like rather elusive.
Oh,
The
really?
mayor did.
Caught it?
My daughter did.
I saw it get caught. I was like, man, she had the magic touch.
Yeah, the dog adopted her.
Went right up to
Well,
her.
that dog ran like the wind. I was trying to feed it Nutter Butters and everything else, and I couldn't catch it. But anyway, so that dog is,
That's awesome.
we have some other issues with some dogs we're trying to take care of and address with some families. So hopefully everybody keep their dogs secure, locked up the best they can. And that's where we are. Working on entering a bunch of old crash reports. We have to go back to 2013 and enter every crash report from 2013 on into the state system. It's an undertaking. It's been interesting.
How many crashes have there been in Marshall?
There's 200 and something from 13 on.
Huh.
Is that mostly on 80?
It's all over. They're all over. So
Yeah. Man, there's a bad one on 142 on the way over here right now.
we had a bad one yesterday.
Bad.
And we had a bad one yesterday on 80.
Yeah.
So, 2 people injured. So that's where we are. That's what we've been doing. And I'll address that from the public comments. I'll address that and get a good answer. But I will say right now that we treat everybody the same in this here in the city, and our visitors and everything else. Our report shows we don't racially profile. 50% of our officers are Hispanic, the other 50% are white, so there's 4 of us. So that's where we are right now. And we're 50%, 50-50 here right now, so. So that's the way we are, but we'll talk to the mayor and we'll talk to you guys about doing some things, and so be a little more proactive with the community.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
We interface here with a lot of farmland, so we have livestock. We also interface with a lot of wildlife. And so you've mentioned the dogs, and so I'd like to see us maybe have a conversation with Lockhart about an interlocal agreement for animal control. I appreciate your quick response to the injured deer that we had, and that was good of you to come. But I think we really need to have a more concise, streamlined contact, a way for residents to contact, either call City Hall and say, I have a dog that's on the road. What do I do? There's a dead deer on the road. What do I do? I mean, it's like everyone was sending out their feelers and attempt and trying to solve this. And fortunately, I called you and you solved it. So, but I'd like to see us work on that. I mean, we continually will always have, and also what I've seen, and you've seen it on the Martindale Facebook a lot, is people leaving dogs here all over the place, just dumping them. And then you try and take them to the Lockhart animal control and they're full. So I think that's something that we need to
I
work
went
on.
and I talked to them the other day. They have had 2,932 cats and dogs brought to their facility since the beginning of the year.
Dang.
They are full.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, they don't have that much room there. Here's one thing, I don't want to inundate everyone calling City Hall. We were just talking about this and discussing it. What I'd like to do is somehow get that, and everybody calls, because there's a number says call Martindale Police. Well, we're not sitting in here in the office, we're out on the street. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to somehow figure out a way to forward that phone to our phones that we have, so we can answer those phone calls in the car and not be inundating everyone up front because they got so many other things to do. They're busy. Adrian and them are busy up there all the time doing stuff. So if we can answer those calls that are coming in for the city or for the police and answer some of those calls. Livestock, what you're talking about, deer and hogs, there's a bunch of hogs. There's a big old flock of herd, flock, whatever you want to call them, gagger, of hogs over on 80 right now. I just saw them. There's a lot of them. There's probably 55, 60 hogs in that little bunch.
Wow.
So, but we can't do nothing with them. If something happens, and I hate to say it, oh yeah, we could, but no, like deer that get hit or stuff like that, you just gotta really let nature take its course. If they're laying there in pain and suffering and everything, we can go and dispatch them.
Mm.
And we can call the game warden also.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yes.
Dispatch, yes.
Yeah, into another world.
Uh,
But no, that's what we can do. And that's what we ended up doing with that one over there. But as far as hauling them off, you offered to move that one away, but we just really just move them so they're further off of the roadway. And we don't leave them right there laying on the side of the road. We'll drag them further to the other side of the ditch because then you get the buzzards and everything come down and then they cause another issue with cars and cars hitting buzzards or whatnot.
And then the other one was about what updates on our vehicles in the back here.
We got the one left. I'm working with someone to try to sell these vehicles, and that's pretty much what we need to do. We just need to sell them and just get rid of them. So Sam, if you want to buy one, sir, I will sell you one now.
Four-wheel drive. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the financial report.
We usually start with the bank balances.
Find that.
Sorry. Oh, you did it in reverse.
There it is. So this report's a little dated, as you can see. As most of the reports tonight were supposed to be given when we had the winter storm. But you see, on February 9th, you see the accounts that we have at First Lockhart Bank totaled $183,046. The emergency fund had $226,000, and the PFIA investment account had $691,000. Dollars. If you scroll down a little bit, you see the amount due the comptroller has now gone below $300,000 to $299, and continue to pay a little bit on that each month. The up on the PFIA fund there, you see the third line down, general fund overflow, $332,000. That's where excess property tax funds are deposited this time of year. So that's the cash balances at this time. Then we would go to the general fund budget report. If you can find that one. Up to the vendor balances.
There it is.
I think that's it. Boy, I can't read that. Okay, you see, this is the October to December, so this is the first quarter of the fiscal year. Total income $199,401, which is 31% of the budget. You see the top line property tax revenue. Through December, we had collected 24% of the property tax revenue. The majority of that revenue comes in January. You'll see on the next report, it comes in about the 10th of January. And then there's another big amount of it that comes in about the 10th of February when businesses generally pay. But so revenues are, I would call that ahead of plan at 31% through 25% of the year. Personnel expenses, you see those are at 23%. So those are in line for year to date. And then on down through the other operating expenses, you see are in total are at 21.8% of budget. So
Looks like we spend a lot of money on office supplies. That one's at 45%. Public notices, we've been doing a lot of those. You see that line at 83%. And spent all the uniform expense, it looks like, for the police officers.
They had to have coats.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Other expenses. That one's high. The court restricted tech expenses, that's the software that communicates between the court and the police officers. I'm not sure if that would be budgeted. I'm not sure why it's hanging out there by itself. Perhaps that belongs on a different line.
Yeah, in the special revenue fund.
Special revenue fund, is that what it is? Okay. So I'll have to look at moving that. Contractual services, the last section. You see those numbers, there should be a total down a little bit. 26.5%, so that's close to plan. So the bottom line, it looks like so far through the first quarter, we brought in $46,000 more than was spent on the general fund. Then I think up above was the detail of expenditures from the general fund. It's that report there. I think that the biggest expense on there is going to be higher up, or biggest expenditure. Actually, no, I'm already thinking about January. I was thinking about the fines that we send the state. Let's go on now to the utility fund budget report.
Real quick question for you, Dwayne. Sorry to do this at this stage, but the fuel expense, is that in our vendor balance detail? That would be under Voyager. We get how frequent do those statements come in?
What was the question?
The Voyager fleet system. See, there were 2 in December. Are those, or actually just 1 in December? We had a payout. Is it a monthly bill?
It's a monthly bill, $600 to $800 a month usually.
That's been pretty steady. I know at one point I was a little concerned on what our burn rate was going to be on that, but
Yeah.
right now.
We've been spending a lot more on vehicle maintenance too. Just
Oil changes.
just a lot more activity with the cars these days.
Yeah.
We went from 1.3 officers to,
Yeah, I know we're doing a lot more patrols and, you can't control fuel prices, but something that if we get a spike later in the summer.
At least they're down now.
Yeah, they're down now. Could put us perhaps over on that line.
Utility, right? What? Utilities, yeah. So. Those numbers are too big to be the utility.
19. Yeah, there you go. You're on it.
There you go. So you see through the first quarter, 81,000 in revenue, 25% the budget. So that's right on the money. Expenses, you go down, look at the total there, 25% there. So we have spent a little more than we brought in, it looks like, but the numbers are close. So I think that's good. And I think up above were the details of what vendors were paid, but there's obviously from looking at these numbers, there's not anything out of the ordinary going on with that.
One above for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's gonna be one,
Above where we started.
I think. Yeah, I guess, boy, these are
I don't
a
know.
little jumbled. There you go. There's your Yeah, your utility fund expenditures right there.
Yeah.
So. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Okay, I think that's it. No surprises.
Okay, thank you.
Everything's going according to plan.
Thank you.
All right.
That's good to hear.
Y'all can wake up now.
Okay, so new business, 4.1, certificate of unopposed candidates for mayor, council member place 2, and council member place 5. So nobody turned in applications to run against myself or Sam. And Jan Bunker had turned in an application, but she withdrew it. So we have Matthew McGovern. And so we won't have to have an election.
That's right. So we'll do the certificates of unopposed first, and then because we verified that there's no opposing candidates for the upcoming positions, we'll be canceling the election. The mayor and I signed a form. And the following form is letting everybody know that our election's canceled. They'll still be using the church for school election and other county items, but as far as the city of Martindale, we're hands off now.
Do you need a motion for this?
For the sake of doing it, sure.
For the sake.
I mean, you might deny it, but it is what it is. Next time.
Is the document that just the mayor signs?
Yeah, it's just a document the mayor signs in myself.
So we don't really have to have a motion. Okay, so we'll move on to 4.2. Cancellation of the May 6th, 2023 general election for the city of Martindale.
So as stated, since there's no opposing candidates and there's no other items or propositions for the ballot, the city of Martindale will not be participating in, or will not be holding an election this year.
So now we get about $5,000 we could probably spend.
Always say
No,
that.
I'm just kidding.
We have party.
Can't say.
8,000,
It's on the budget.
yeah.
He already knows, he knows what kind of beer he's gonna get in that case.
Ought to be talking like that now.
This is
Mighty dignified names, look at that.
It's 45, they're all, everybody lives on Northwest River Road.
Yeah. Well, Sam lives right here downtown.
It's an extension.
It's an extension, just a flick over.
Yeah.
So Mayor, on this one, we will want to do a vote on it.
A motion. Okay, can I have someone have a motion
Go ahead, Sam.
to cancel the election?
Is it here, the city of Martindale hereby cancels the election schedule?
Make a motion to
Oh.
approve signing the order of cancellation.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the order of cancellation of the May 6th election 2023.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to 4.3. Ward Langford Community Management Services as grant administrator for the TDA Community Development 2023-2024 application.
So we put out a request for proposals for grant administrators for this grant opportunity. We received only one submission from Langford, and their submission met the requirements. So we're looking for city council to accept awarding of that contract.
Have they said what their percentage of the grant that they charge when we have a grant? Or, I mean, what's their administration? Is it a variable administration fee or?
Each grant has different threshold levels. It complies with the threshold that's the state. I don't recall what that number is.
But we've worked with them before in land acquisition and in other grants, so they're.
Northwest River Road project
Yeah.
is.
And the road.
Would it be fair to say it's between 8 and 15%?
Likely
Fair,
within there, yeah.
So, we need a motion.
We do.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to award Langford Community Management Services as grant administrator for the TDA Community Development 2023-2024 application.
Okay, now motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the street closure permit. This came about because we had a family come in. They're so cute. They wanted to close the street, and without really thinking about it, I did approve a special permit. It's for a wedding, so it is for a private event. It's not a civic event. And when I took it to the police chief, he did say, you know what, should we really be closing this street for a private event? They are renting the Crook building from Carlton. I think 2 afternoons is what I remember in the application. And they're going to hopefully be renting for Maury all 5 of his apartments. I think they're going to be done by the end of April.
Mhm.
And so I do intend to allow this family to use this. But then I thought, as we go forward, what's the council's preference about closing the street for private events? I think it could cause some public.
What did the chief say?
His first reaction was he didn't think we should close it for private events. I mean, I can see where, like, I'm walking my dog and it's like, oh, what's going on downtown? Kind of thing. I don't know. It's open for discussion now.
Mm. Well, we've closed the streets before for music events, and it wasn't a private event, but it was an event that, as you say, anyone from town came to. But it would depend on what day of the week it is. I
I
guess.
wouldn't say that's necessarily true, though. I mean, there's two types of events, public and private, and public is a government hosted event.
Mhm.
And if there is anything other than a government hosted event, it is a private event. Now, granted, government funds can support a private event, but I do think that prior events that the city hosted have largely been private events that may or may not have had some degree of public funds or support.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like the river appreciation where anybody could come to it.
Where are they shutting the street down? How they normally do? Boom, boom.
Yes. Mhm.
So this goes beyond just a single event or my perspective on this is we don't have clear policy within the city on how to administer, regulate gatherings downtown of any nature, except and apart from our filming ordinance, which sets clear fees, well, fairly clear fees. And so we could look as an example, using what the filming permit requirement is for a private use permit. Similar fee structure, similar sort of requirements, similar hours, similar notification requirements for neighbors that might be impacted. We can even expand it to include all city-owned property, including parks or what have you. We can make this pretty comprehensive if we want to. We can continue to address this as a case by case with the police chief, but when we do things case by case, not following standard processes, it can be pretty inefficient. And as we've seen with like subjective, and the potential for misunderstandings is pretty large, as we've seen with concerns that were raised over the Martindale Days Market downtown and how that was regulated or communicated with those organizers on trying to maintain a pedestrian safety.
Yeah, how are we shutting the street down, just with cones?
No, usually what Chief Ward does, he finds people to put automobiles across there in addition to barricades.
Does it work?
And then we have 1 or 2 policemen that are, one on each end to make sure that
Mhm.
order is maintained.
So then we're pulling away from other, we're costing the city more money for having to.
Well, he'd have to find officers that
Yeah.
aren't our officers.
Well, then there's just
Coming in.
Well, and with what's happening now too is, okay, so we have 2 businessmen that are being used for this wedding, but now the cafe is opened up and she's gonna be bringing in food trucks. So it could get a little,
They're bringing in food trucks.
well, that was her intention because a month ago when she put in this event, because we didn't have any meetings in February, the cafe wasn't open, but it is open now.
Yeah.
And she's gonna start being open, she being Emily, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So she'll be open during this wedding. And so I can make some suggestions to the couple that's doing this event. One, they're probably gonna have to make some big signs saying that it's a private event, that it's a wedding thing. And the other one suggesting that they somehow use the cafe in addition to using Carlton's building, using Mari's apartments. There's a lot to really think about.
The cafe could reach out to them and
My-
give them a offer.
Well, that's true.
My concern, and this is to Bud, liability. I mean, we putting ourselves up for liability. I mean,
We require a liability insurance and she provided that.
On events that go through an application process, but mass gatherings of pedestrian traffic downtown that's not organized or maintained to ensure pedestrian safety is another concern.
that concerns me. You're gonna have people drinking and
Yeah, they are gonna be
cross
drinking.
traffic and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't want to get sued. I mean, we want to make sure we got all of our ducks in a row. And we got to make sure that the city, we get income from it, I mean, our expenses are more than covered, plus,
Well, we need to look at all of
Yeah.
our expenses because they haven't been raised in
I mean, if we're, because
10, 20 years.
we're seeing this, this 2-story structure is going to be a game changer for the town. I mean, this could be a common occurrence. People, weddings, they want to do the both. And I think I agree with you. We need to make sure that do we want to do this? Will the citizens input into it or?
I
But
don't think it's a matter of, do we want to do it? I mean, we have to do it. It's gonna keep happening, like you said, so.
well, it's kind of a double-edged sword because we got to support our business people
Yeah.
downtown. But you're right, Jerry. We need to have some policy.
Yeah, I mean, so I think to Jared's point is this is a mutation of the filming permit. Because what it is the cordoning off of the downtown area to the exclusion of all others that don't have the right to be there. And in this case, we are cordoning off the downtown area to the exclusion of others. Except I would say the added benefit is, in this case, not only is the city receiving whatever revenue it will receive for the special event permit, but in addition to that, it sounds like the downtown businesses are actually going to rake it in. You got Carlton making some money, you got Maury making some money, you probably got the cafe making some money. I mean, so this is exactly the kind of thing that that is going to bolster the downtown area.
Sales tax.
Now, I mean, again, is every scenario going to be a good fit? You know, craft the rules as you will, but I mean, I don't see any liability here that wouldn't otherwise exist in any other scenario, but it's,
Well, I mean, one thing, shutting the roads down would protect pedestrians.
Oh, yeah.
crossing the street.
The fee is $25 for the permit. That's what the city gets.
It's not,
And so
Not
should
there.
the fee be
Oh,
higher
yeah.
for a private party
Yes.
oh, yeah. I mean, we gotta
versus a
make it.
civic event? And then they do have to pay the police, and the police are up to $50 an hour, minimum of 3 hours. So they're gonna have 2 police. It's a drop in a bucket for this party.
Well-
But I'm just talking about future regulation, and I just wanted help in defining this permit a little bit better so that we know what the city wants.
I know you two guys are really good at this. I mean, there's gotta be other cities like us that are.
And one of the, you want to show the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you're already ahead of it. Okay.
It's not an uncommon issue. I mean, there's many cities that put out infographics like this explaining the process of event permits. I'd like to direct your attention to step 4, where they're making sure that you obtain, you provide insurance, you schedule properly, you make sure the security is there, and that health permits are assigned. An instance of a bad event is the Halloween event in South Korea or Singapore, where people were trampled over overcrowding and not closing alleys. Now, you know,
So, yeah.
but you know, or having no barricades, you have someone just drive through, they lose traffic, they lose the power to their steering wheel, and there goes, I don't know, 3 people or something. But to avoid instances like that, we definitely ought to become more strict with our special event permits.
Do they have the rates, what they charge?
Not on this here, but if you also look, they require many more days in advance to.
I mean, talking from a city and financial, in the city needs to make some money on it, somewhere.
We can look at the rate structure in the filming permit and model it similarly.
Other cities.
There's some confusion from my perspective in that rate setting in the filming permit. So we might be an opportunity to address both of those issues if we wanted to marry those up.
Maybe get comparisons from other cities that are similar to ours, what they charge.
Well, I think Martindale downtown is unique.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Very easy.
I don't think what another city charges for their downtown would be necessarily fully applicable to what Martindale provides. I think ours is a gem.
Oh, I totally agree.
And
I agree. Yeah.
the market for using Martindale is probably different than other places.
I think we really need to think about this because, I mean, I even thought about having a barbecue festival here at one point. Where you rent the whole city out and line it all perimeter with.
Like I said, we
But
need,
people would come here and.
Yeah.
look
We need
at
to
this place
support-
and be like, this is cool, man. This place-
yeah,
it
we
looks
need,
like
we
you're
need
in
to
a movie,
support our
you know?
businesses here.
Yeah.
that's what I
And we
do
get,
every time I come. I just gotta look.
we need to,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, like I say, it needs to be looked into and have a set
Yeah.
policy and procedure. And like I say, this is a good template
Jesus.
coming in.
Flag would fall
Boy,
They call,
Is something in the park, like a birthday party or a bouncy house, is that considered a special event?
We can make this as broad or as narrow as we want to. So if
Because
we
we
want,
should
if we
start
want
to include
consider,
that, I think.
we can have a tier.
yeah, a tiered system, just a separate carve out to address that.
But I mean, if someone wants to come and use a public park, they can. The only purpose of a permit is if you want to use it to the exclusion of others.
yeah.
And so if someone decides that we want to host a birthday party, and oh, by the way, we don't want anyone else being there except the people who want to be there.
Or if they hook up to electricity.
Correct.
Okay.
You could. So earlier today, I was looking at the city of Austin, and if you're using any of the listed facilities Austin has, and it has more than 50 people, you would then require an event permit. So we could establish downtown area or the historic district. If you gather more than 20 people, 30 people, then you must get a event permit. Or even the parks or specifically named parks. Say you don't want to do this at phase one, but you want to permit gatherings at Allen Bates, you could if you're exact about it in the ordinance.
And if there are people that gather in excess of those numbers, then there's authority to disperse this.
That's right.
Or to require yeah. If we get in a situation where they're using a public roadway, but not to the exclusion of others, but it becomes necessary for safety reasons that it in effect becomes an exclusionary use, then we'd want to have that permit as well. So I'm just thinking of some of the larger concert events that the cafe has put on in the past that draw significant crowds, even though it wasn't, I want to put the stage in the center of the street. Some of those events might have qualified, or the Saturday market, depending on the draw of pedestrian traffic could potentially apply to this, depending on whether the road needs to be,
Actually,
use of the road needs to be restricted. In some way.
actually, for a safety concern, the road probably needs to be shut down. If you got people walking around, we got people running, I see people running 40 miles an hour through downtown.
The only thing we gotta be careful about getting quick on the draw, shutting it down, is our Envision Martindale 2025 plan had some pretty strong feedback from the residents that they didn't want this place to turn into a green hall or, probably not applicable, but Austin 6th Street or some other kind of party venue where we shut down the street and it's just, Treasure Island and everybody's turning.
So we should have it limited, decent time. That could be one thing talked about.
Yeah,
But how
but-
long do we?
Yeah, we got to make sure
I agree.
we're addressing the.
We also have to have a plan though about when we close off the street, because I've seen it before, Crockett Street, if the traffic is rerouted on Crockett Street, it's not wide enough for two cars to pass. And so I don't know if you could have it going one way, say down Crockett or whatever, but that's a
Something
concern that I
we
have.
would have to
That's a lot.
work, we'll work with the police chief. It's possible that we have to shut it down all the way down in 1979,
Oh,
potentially. And except for local traffic for homeowners or something, but that's something as we go through, it's not the first time. Well, it sounds like there's an interest in having a policy.
Yeah. Porta potties and all that too is included in that event thing, porta potties, hand washing
So,
stations.
Using the Fredericksburg process they have here as a requirement is health sanitation measures. So that would include porta potties and other things.
Okay.
Now, when they rent Carlton's building, he does have restrooms back there.
Okay.
I think we need to watch on how late, you don't want to go 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. People are going to raise hell.
Yeah.
Typically, we don't usually go
about 10,
past 10
10
So
o'clock.
I think that would,
because we do have so many people living.
I'm just saying, you're gonna have some, if it goes past 10, you're probably gonna have some people not real happy. So I don't know, just something we need to discuss. So
10 is late enough. Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock.
you're right about that. Hey, young whippersnapper.
If this event is on private property, for example, that open area over there, okay, that doesn't require a permit.
The conversation we're having is only if they wouldn't need a permit over there. They might have to run into a permit regarding noise nuisance, but if they're going past a certain time of night and noise level, the concern that might affect the private businesses downtown or other enterprises is if there's a unsafe pedestrian
And you're talking about street closures, and then you're talking about permits.
well in my mind it would be similar. You're closing the street if you anticipate conducting activities in the downtown that would put 250 pedestrians on our sidewalks and streets where we don't really have sidewalks from one end to the next except for one side of the road. That amount of people condensed in the short area we have here, that's a pedestrian safety hazard. And so if there's a reasonable expectation that you would know that some programming that you're putting on is going to draw that level of crowd, you would need to have an event permit done in advance. So even though the event itself is taking place on private property, heck, even indoors, but you're going to have the spill out effects of creating a pedestrian safety issue. That's where.
It sounds like they intend to use kind of like go back and forth between street party, everyone having a good time. And so they want to shut the street down and they want to occupy the street as they go back and forth. Maybe that's a bit of hyperbole.
It's just only in one area.
Well, a lot of times the permit is used as a safety valve for just the safety of all citizens. The Catholic Church always gets a permit, informs us where they're going to have parking. They do serve alcohol. We make sure they have the proper permits.
They don't close the street down.
No, but you have a lot of people walking up and down the street, so you have safety issues. During COVID, when we had a chili cook-off out on the highway, Mayor Davini and Jared made sure they were following all the COVID guidelines. So this is something, if somebody were to get hurt, who are they going to go after first? The city of Marshall. So we have a responsibility to make sure that the public is safe.
Now, I can see a permit which would show that the organization has liability insurance. Okay, if it's a big widespread thing, but if it's a private party, that does not need a permit.
Well, when she's asking to close this public street down, it does.
You mentioned chili cook-off in that list. Would that also apply to the dam chili cook-off at the Cotton Gin, and then the overflow parking flows to all sides of the street from there all the way to here? Because it's on private property?
Jan did get a permit for that.
Yeah, so this is where we're going to have to, and it kind of gets to the point that she was making is, events held on private property, we have no ability to regulate what they're doing unless it's violating a noise ordinance or something like that. The concern is from a risk control perspective for pedestrian safety, or is the parking activities constricting the flow of the streets that make it inaccessible to emergency vehicles. That's where we'll work with our police chief to carefully craft the language on how that would apply to those private like events. So the cook-off, yeah, that can draw a significant number of folks. If you have parking issues, we'll have to address that, and that we'll look at how that gets crafted in.
Do we have flashlights here? Do you have flashlights? Okay, just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, my phone's up.
Okay, good. Oh, it's all on our phones,
Okay,
yeah.
so do we need a motion to ask?
It was just a discussion to get
Or
the
just a
idea.
discussion, okay. So,
Yeah, the takeaway for me is there's an interest, make it broad. And it seems like there's concurrence at least on starting with the filming permit as a baseline for modeling how that would be, the fees would be structured.
And we didn't really answer the question, should private parties close down the street?
I mean, if they pay, they pay the permit.
Just have a different permit
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
non-civic events.
Yeah, this is the last time that happens, Mayor.
Okay.
Jared Conley made a good point. Under the local government code, there is the Mass Gatherings Act that applies to counties. But if you guys want to reference that, it might be a good start point.
Okay, let's move on to 4.5, short-term rental. I think Adrian has researched this.
What is short-term rental fee does, and it collects, at least the state collects 6% of per room rented anywhere in the state of Texas. However, we are also authorized to collect percent of that as long as we set it. Our ordinances do state, we do have some ordinances that regulate hotels and short-term rental spaces such as bed and breakfast, hotels, motels, and here are the zones. Now, we do collect 7% of price paid per room on short-term rentals, but those are those who do submit that. And that here's a visual of how many short-term rentals are active in Martindale. So we have a few and are in the city limits. You see one is for $1,012. This is on Airbnb as of today. Now,
Those are the fees collected or the money that
this
they
money
made?
they're paying.
This is the advertised price.
That's from Airbnb.
And then the state collects 6% of that, we collect 7% of that. But so as long they submit their fees to the city. Now, the issue that we're running into is we don't really have a catalog of who is running an Airbnb business in our city limits. What we're hoping to gather from this meeting today is, should we encourage Airbnbs in the city? Because we could regulate the percentage of Airbnbs in our town as to there should be 20% of 80% to 20% rental to homeowners. Does that make sense?
Basically creating a quota system to artificially lower the market, the number of homes in the market that are being used as Airbnbs. The reason some other municipalities have seen a reason to go to those measures because they have found that overpopulation of short-term rentals reduces the sense of community because you lose your neighbors. And as a lot of long-term rental properties get converted into short-term rentals, you have a lot of what do they call it? Like free rider issues, and where people might not take care of common areas as much, and there's a concern that can degrade the aesthetics and health safety of properties.
You know, I had a problem with an Airbnb 2 doors down from me, and I had to call the landowner. They had a fraternity party, and
Yeah.
they were very loud, and they were trespassing on my property. It was a real problem.
So the only method the city has right now to regulate short-term rentals is the bed and breakfast classification in our use table in zoning that requires a special use permit. Outside of that planning and zoning activity, there's no other regulatory policy that we have in place that would require business registration.
That's right.
Or other regulations regarding that business type. So there's a list that Adrian has here, number of guests per room, what insurance are they required to maintain, what's the accountability of the property owner. I know some cities have required a 24/7 property manager to be on contact. That's registered with the city. So if there is a noise complaint,
What is that car?
It's a
Car.
It's our police officer.
One of them going out.
That's a horrible noise. There we go. If you register a business, a short-term rental business, you have to have a 24/7 property manager. That agency or person's contact is on file with the police department. So if there is a noise complaint that's received, they have someone to contact. That way it doesn't have to become a law enforcement issue. Some might require that information be published or shared with their neighbors in case there is a complaint. So if you ran that issue, you have to contact the owner. Do you have the owner's number or the property manager's number? There's a range of policy options that the city could take to maintain community and also allow for people to operate short-term rentals to whatever extent the city wants. Right now, it's very laissez-faire and
But I tell you what happened with my case, it was out of control. I mean, they were trespassing on my property, hollering and screaming. And I called the owner and I said, dude, you're not a good neighbor. You got a frat rat party next door, and I give him credit. He actually came up with a policy, like a $700 deposit. If the police are called, you lose that deposit.
yeah. So-
Most people do. Most people have, like, yeah, they're respectable. I think Martindale's not gonna have an issue because most people want to live here.
Well, I mean, that was an issue.
Well, look at the downtown. They're a multi-use dwelling is, instead of being used as a long-term rental, where it would create a neighborly atmosphere, is being used as a short-term.
But they're gonna register that, aren't they? Do they have to?
No, I don't,
I mean,
they might.
it-
I have to go back and
I
look.
would
Those are-
imagine it is, 'cause
But
it is
there's no
definitely
there's no registration requirement. What I'm saying is it's
That's-
purely a specific use permit, and I believe it only applies to residential zoning. So if
Right.
you're in a multi-use zone like this one, you can have a short-term rental by
But
right.
this is where we want the population, Owen.
Do we want
Well,
homeowners
it-
or do we want tourists, basically?
Well,
I mean, you can do
You
either
want
thing.
tourists down here, don't you?
Yeah,
I'm
but-
not saying that.
but I'm just saying-
I'm not saying that there should or shouldn't.
Yeah. Policy wise.
I'm just saying policy-wise, there's nothing that we're doing. I was using that as an example of
Yeah, yeah.
what could be a long-term rental space is now a short-term rental
Well,
space.
I mean, you know the logistics of it, right? I mean, short term, if they want to put the work in, it's gonna be tenfold the amount of money they're gonna make from a long term.
So that's the point, yeah.
Yeah,
So if you do, if the incentive, the economic incentives are there to, that when the market perfects, there are no long-term rentals or very, very few long-term rentals,
yeah.
and it converts to short-term rental.
How many houses, I mean, you could almost count all the houses in this town on your hands. You know, like in the downtown area, there's not a lot of houses. I
But
really.
it's not just the downtown.
We're talking about the whole town. You know, it's,
Going down the river too, yeah. That's
it's-
a big part of it.
and I'll give the gentleman credit. After that incident, he had families come in, and they got kids and families, and they're quiet. I don't have a problem with that. But then you got problems if you, like that one I'm talking about, they got 18 beds in there. And then you got a big party, you're gonna have people up and down the road.
She lives right next to it.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Issues with that
Yeah.
property?
Well, it was at first. It got better,
I
but
know there's one down on River Bend next to Bruce's place,
Yeah.
and they were bad at first, and then it got brought to his attention. Now they have, he's got
But
a whole
again,
ordinance, he's got a whole ordinance from now,
yeah.
and they haven't had an issue at all. So I get what you guys are saying, but.
I mean, we gotta be careful, you know, you got to kind of play both sides. I mean, people have a right to do their property, but you know what they did in Austin? And for example, in Austin, they had such a problem that they required the owner to live on the property. That's one thing they did, but that's Austin.
You know, some markets did the opposite of that. That can't be your primary residence if it's gonna be your Airbnb.
Hey, hold on. How did Austin, wait, hold on. Austin, the owner has to live out the rest.
That's what I heard at one time. Maybe they changed it. They had a,
I mean, I'll stay at Airbnbs and they ain't.
well, maybe they changed, but that was talked at one time.
They also have, there's ordinances in other cities where the owner must be a resident of the city as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
And that way they're present when there's an issue. And it also restricts investors coming in and just buying and then
Yeah.
using this as an
Yeah.
excuse to.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is like, man, how many opportunities are there in this town, really? Like, how many houses, I know I'm a realtor, how many houses have been for sale for this, in this town? Like,
That's my next question. Don't mind it.
yeah, in like the last decade.
Adrian, how many of those short-term rentals that you pulled up on Airbnb have a special use permit or some type of agreement with the city?
So they were not specifically, I wasn't targeting those houses, I was just showing an example.
Okay,
But that
so
would
let me-
require,
Let me rephrase the question. How many Airbnbs or short-term rentals does the city have permits, like money, that are working and doing that?
So there's two answers to that question.
Okay.
How many are paying taxes? I think are less than 5.
Okay.
How many have received specific use permits? Many more than that, but not all of them that received that permit are actually operating on Airbnb or VBRO, one of the others. And there's a good number that we suspect that are being advertised on those websites and maybe other places that have not received the specific use permit. Handling it through a planning and zoning avenue as provides a gateway to engage with those property owners. But if you're in a mixed use area, as we talked about, you're allowed to have a short-term rental Airbnb by right. You don't have to have a specific use permit. So we lose that touch point with those businesses,
But you
those
still
people.
have to pay the taxes.
But
You
there's
still have to pay the taxes. And so there's a way that the city could, hire an outside firm, conduct a tax audit,
Right.
go through that process. But if alternative, strip it down to just one, there's a $10 registration fee.
Yeah.
And now we have a a spreadsheet
Fair.
that said, all right, this is a registered business. This is who we receive taxes from. We haven't received taxes from this registered business or this,
Can't just go on
this Airbnb is being advertised and they're not registered.
We're also losing utility money because in the office, we don't know if somebody is actually a resident or a business. And if they're an Airbnb, they often come in and tell us that they're just residential. And so they're paying residential rates versus business rates for their utilities.
I think we went through that once before though, and they had to be like more than 4 units or something before it's considered
Yeah.
commercial. So they all pretty much fall under
They're all residents.
residential.
And most people do use like a getaway house. Like if you're 1031 exchanging, which is what a lot of people do in real estate, you have to rent that house out for a certain amount of time, or you won't technically can't 1031 exchange it.
So I kind of see your point, and I know some people in Riverbend, they're having issues with Airbnbs over there. A lot of homes become Airbnb.
Yeah, and the hotel tax is one of the few that reaches beyond just the city limits and touches into the ETJ.
So, all right, so how can we reinforce it?
So what I want for tonight is what kind of policy prescriptions are you interested in and what are you not interested in? And we can kind of write something up.
It's just like anything else. If somebody's parking in an illegal spot, you give them a ticket. So if somebody's
I guess what I meant to say is there a desire to continue to enforce short-term rentals through a zoning restriction only? Or is there an openness to city council to having a business registration ordinance? And then we can add on to that whatever additional policies or prescriptions you want. I mean, it's kind of unfair because there's only half the body sitting tonight, but
right,
or just over half.
Are you looking at addressing the right to assemble? And is that to prevent an STR from becoming something more than one would think it would be?
That's not too much of the concern. It's more of a revenue audit compliance perspective that we're trying to address by requiring business registration. We would be able to more readily identify those businesses rather than relying on internet search resources exclusively.
I mean, there's a couple of good cases. The best one, the most recent one is the Draper case out of the Fort Worth Court of Appeals. And it addresses this issue. And I mean, what they wanted to do is carve out an area for short-term rentals, but it deals with getting city approval to do that and then creating opportunity there. So I mean, I think what you're looking at is it's allowable and it helps the city understand where those issues are and manage them.
I'm for it. I say we.
You know, I'm kind of mixed on it, but it needs to be regulated, very regulated. Because if you got somebody that's a resident and they live there full time and they got 10, 15 people staying over there and they're noisy and they're loud and it's going to affect their life. And so it really needs to be regulated. I mean, pretty, like, I don't know what the chief, you have any input on this? I
I
mean,
would like to add that we're able to somehow find out who is renting it so we can have a contact person when we do have issues. The other issue I'd like to see is ensuring that they have adequate smoke detectors, CO2 detectors, fire extinguishers, something like that. I'm sure the fire department will be here to speak for that, but
Some Marcus does that.
I think there's
safety.
I understand.
also another opportunity, kind of like we were saying, that you can give like a, not necessarily like, hey, this is what the rest of the Airbnbs do in town. Here's a.
Oh, yeah, a welcome packet.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah,
you,
for
you
like-
pay your $10 registration fee, here's a welcome packet.
Yeah. It's like,
Now
hey-
you're a short-term rental operator in Martindale, here's all the things you
But
need to
also
know,
it's like,
here's the
this
form you need to fill
These are the
out.
ones that like now, like the guys next to you guys don't really have a lot of issues. This is their guidelines. It'd be cool if you guys follow that too. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know,
Best practices in the community.
yeah, well, something like that. I just-
629 Southwest 3rd 777.
All right. Sounds like lawyer talk.
I mean, you know, people have a right to.
Yeah,
To do that, but it needs, it's kind of a double-edged, I mean, it needs to be heavily regulated.
We also talk about almost in every meeting that we need to create some kind of revenue for the city, you know? And this is another little thing that we could create a little bit more revenue for the city.
Not really.
We're a little handcuffed on this.
Yeah, you can only spend it on about 4 things.
Yeah, I mean, it still goes towards the city, right? It's a
Well,
tax.
advertising
Tourism.
for tourists is what you can use it.
Supposed to be a self-looking action plan where you collect taxes, you
But then,
instead of creating more
The
tourism.
use is up there if you want to reference it.
and then if you got an issue, then we gotta get our police department involved, so, you know, I mean,
If it's-
there has to be some really,
Like getting paid either way, right?
well, I mean, if we got a bunch of Airbnbs and they're always running over there,
Well, so here's the thing. The right already exists.
yeah.
And in the absence of Martindale doing something, this can already happen. Martindale doing something puts in place rules that govern and dictate how it happens. So it's not as though that this couldn't happen anyway. It could. I mean, if right now everyone around here decided, you know, we're tired, we're gonna move on, you could have 30 STRs that pop up. Now granted, they all probably would be profitable because the market would be oversaturated and it would, but that, it is not as though what is being discussed would create a right that doesn't already exist. It's just managing it.
Yeah, between dilapidated homes and now Airbnbs, we're losing community.
I mean,
Well, there's plenty of things that we could spend it on, though. I mean, the visitor center, signage, billboards, signs. I mean, there's plenty of stuff. Events, we hosted some events this past year financially. So I'm just concerned about the amount of time that it will take personnel to look at 20 different Airbnbs, say, over a certain weekend. I mean, is it on an honor system once they pay the $10, or do we back check them and say, well, do you have someone here this weekend? And remember, you should be paying your 13%.
there are some websites that are geared towards people who are looking to get in the short-term rental business that provides market intelligence information to them on what the median prices and stuff, and it'll provide locations where they're being operated. You can look on Airbnb at any given time and see them. How frequently, how much is going to be audited? Whose responsibility is it going to be to audit it? Are we going to address that through a code enforcement issue or a tax compliance audit kind of issue? Is to be determined, but it's, I think possibly both. You could address it as a code enforcement issue on the one hand, and then revenue collection on the other.
There's a lot of stuff you can do with that tax.
Mhm.
Yeah, in terms of revenue, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we've
I've been waiting for it.
Or a visitor center, a chamber of
It's
commerce.
not gonna be as cool as the Staples Center down the road, but.
Yeah, I think what you said, Adrian, is look at San Marcos, see what other cities are doing. And I'm with Catherine. I mean, Airbnbs are a good thing, but they need to be really regulated.
Yeah.
Really regulated. I mean, for the community spirit, like we live right next door. It's gotten better, but it was bad. I mean,
Yeah, just
really bad.
Just wait till you sell your home and now she's sandwiched between
I
two.
know. Exactly. I thought about that.
But honestly, there's a market there, especially the riverfront you're talking about, to convert to Airbnb, and you're going to lose, that entire size.
I mean, those properties are so goddamn expensive, it's not even worth putting Airbnb in them anymore, but.
Oh, sometimes they can only afford it if they go to do Airbnb. It's another thing, So,
I mean, it's Mike's retirement.
oh, my retirement plan, no.
I'm making a joke.
No, go ahead. But I mean, I've experienced that. And I got really fortunate. The guy was a good guy and he took care of it, but would the next guy do that? And then again, that's the advantage of a city. Like, they have a real problem with Riverbend because they've got that problem right now and they can't control, they're having a problem.
This is one of the areas where we can show our benefit.
Exactly.
Yes.
Totally, exactly. I agree. And that's what I'm saying is, I understand both sides, but it needs to be heavy regulated that we don't want to, what we don't want is a bunch of party houses down there. I don't.
Yeah.
100%.
So,
What San Marcos does, and a little bit what Sam said, is the way you keep up with it is you get a 1-year permit, you have to renew it every year. And if you're to get in a violation, and those agreements that you make that you promise you won't, for instance, create a nuisance to your
well, could there
neighbors.
be,
That's a good idea.
could there be fines? Could we have fines?
Well, what happens is that you get suspended, you can no longer rent it out, that building, for another year or 2
Okay.
years.
Okay.
That's how you can kind of control it and make sure that everybody's following the rules.
But they got code enforcement.
But again, you're right, it's actually under the code enforcement branch in San Marcos. This event, the police officers would probably be closer.
Well, to code for short-term rentals. Mhm. Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, I don't know if we solved anything, but we have.
No, gave us the information we
I think
needed
that was good. I think
to
that last point was a good idea.
start on something.
Yeah.
Well, too, I think there should be, if they're out of control, there should be a fine. We could impose some sort of a fine on the owner of the Airbnb.
They have that installed in the Airbnb. I thought they had a deposit, and you lose your deposit.
Well,
or whatever.
those are a lot of times to make damage deposits or something like that. But what that individual did, the house next door to you, he had his own policy. Hey, if the police are called and they have a nuisance or decibels are a certain level, you're gonna lose $700. You're gonna lose it. He
His
installed it.
deposit.
His
If the
deposit.
decibels are a certain level, we can write, we'd have to put it in an ordinance, but we could write the level of the ordinance, and we can start writing citations for a city violation of city ordinance.
Okay. Good enough. Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to 4.6. This was something that came out of the workshop. So direct city staff to coordinate with Park Mobile to establish pay for parking at Allen Bates and Phase 1 parks. Well, I thought we were talking about the Skull Crossing.
This is for pay for parking, so we get prepared for the upcoming summer season.
Can we do skulls?
The
We need to do-
Skull.
We need
We
to
wanted
do.
to do Skull
Let
Park.
me
and
clarify
Phase
with this
1.
one. One thing I've insisted since day one on this, anybody that lives in this town or pays taxes in this town do not pay zero. zero.
Yeah, we didn't want to pay for parking at Allen Bates. It
Okay,
was a phase
so
one.
let's just generally discuss the concept of paid to park, but let's not discuss it with respect to any park, because we can get away with that.
Yeah, so this is, tonight, we're not looking for any action by city council to approve a paid parking ordinance or anything like that. This was an opportunity for, because the workshop was not attended by the full body of the city council, give them an opportunity to weigh in on this issue, because they were not engaged in that conversation at the time. So fortunately, they're not here.
Yeah.
So
I think that's-
Yeah,
I think what we might do is just table this, if you don't mind, Mayor. Adrian and I can continue to do the market research, make contact with Park Mobile, identify what their standard kind of contracting forms and costs and relationships look like, not enter into any agreements or anything, and then be able to present that at a future council meeting.
I would like to hear what Chief Ward had researched. As
So,
far
Can you come up
as-
here?
yes. So the one thing that we discussed, in the meeting, that I talked about, we can do this, but it really does no good unless you have an enforcement side of it. Because people could just go in there and park and you have nothing, no teeth whatsoever. And I think you and I discussed that. So there are some ways to go about this, and it would be beneficial to the city if we could come into a contract with a towing service, whichever towing service, doesn't matter to me, a towing service, and then they come out and we can work together hand in hand to say, hey, we're going to enforce this particular area. And then what would happen is then that someone illegally parks there or whatever, then their vehicle's towed away. Then they have to contact that tow company to get their vehicle back. They pay that tow company a specific fee. We come into some kind of contract, and then the city of Martindale is able to work with that tow company, whatever their contract is. That will help out the city a couple of ways. One, the tow company will come in and put in all the signage, because it's got to tell the people, hey, your vehicle, this area is patrolled, or whatever the case may be, by this tow company. If your vehicle, you come back and your vehicle's not here, contact this tow company. So they'll put up all the signage. We're not having to pay for signage. If we have that, I think that would be a two-pronged approach to this. So you have pay for parking, and then you have some teeth to go after it and then be able to enforce it. So then if someone does pay to park, or someone's not paid to park, we can get that car out of there so someone does come and pay to park. Or a citizen comes there with their permit or wherever that can park, they don't, at no fee, and park there. And we'll know who those people are. I think that's the only way we can really go about this. Going and writing a ticket on a car is, because of the way the river works, it's going to be no good. We couldn't go find that person, so we write a ticket to the car, it stays there all day long.
Yeah.
And they may or may not come and pay that ever. And so we just lost a spot because that car's just sitting there all day long.
So at phase one, if we wanted to have parking paid for, and then people just went and parked in the bar ditches, can they do that? Or would we have signs along the road that would say no parking?
Well, we would have to work with the county and TxDOT, because that is the state right
State
away.
highway.
You think they'd work with us?
I think so.
Is that a safety issue?
Yes, they've done it, because then you got people walking down that road. And if you go to places, I'll talk about what I know. If you go to like Whitewater Amphitheater on 306, TxDOT come in and put tons of no parking signs.
Oh,
People do.
Still park there. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a spot with about 7 cars.
But you have a way, and it's enforceable when you go, we towed them, we towed them when I was there. So,
What I call the park rangers and New Braunfels with the park mobile system, and they have a separate force, like a park ranger force, but they have yet to have the ability to say, scan the individual license plate to know whether that person is paid or not. They have to go to the app and look at the list of all the license plates of the people that have paid, compare that to the individual vehicle that they're looking at, and then determine at that point. And they do say that disabled vets that have a license plate are free also, so I like that. Some lots are only pay on the weekends, some are only paying, none you pay during the week. So I think we're mostly concerned about a weekend thing.
Well, no,
Right, the summer.
no, we got, I'm telling you what's gonna happen here.
By
Yeah.
Easter.
Because San Marcos is already initiating this, and I hate to say this, we're into a bad drought. And the Coleman County dries up first, we could be the only area here, and we're gonna get inundated. I mean, we're really gonna get inundated, and I think it's an issue that we really, because look what happened to us last year.
And we could come in and make parking, there's a different way to do that, so we can number our spots. And I thought about this, let's just use Skull Road, right? So we know that we got X number of spots that can park in forward if we get that spot, right?
Well, we do, right? We have that, okay, we have that.
Or we can go phase one.
Phase one is
We
a
can
better
go down there,
example.
we can set up reflector posts and have those reflectors as marking off your parking spots. Once it's full, it's full. You don't want people parking all over the place, and then we can have something to say, hey, this thing's full. And then number those parking spots, so when they go to this, they actually say, hey, I'm paying at 35, but when I looked into it, and then my vehicle is parked in spot number 12. So spot number 12, we have that. It would take some work on our part, absolutely, but it could be done, and we could set it up, and then we would know.
That's,
And I like that park mobile like you came up with, and maybe, I still think too, an annual pass. I mean, we could issue an annual pass. Yeah, like Texas Parks and Wildlife, for example, I'm a paddler, okay? I hate access. I mean, hey, you need to have access, okay? So it's a double blade sword because people have parked skulls for years.
But they're still coming in, even with,
Yeah.
they're still coming in and paying something to get that pass.
Yeah, but they get the pass, and that way they're covered, so you see that pass on their windshield, they're covered, you don't mess with them.
it's like the Texas Beach Pass.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and and the problem is, you well know, right now, there was a half dozen cars there already, and and those people, like the canoe racers, the wreck people, I think a lot of them would just pay an annual pass, and just,
Okay, y'all want to charge for this permit. Okay, if you live in the city, the city folks, I'll agree with you, that the city people already pay taxes. They should pay.
and if you're a property owner, if you pay any city tax.
I don't live in the city. I don't have property in the city. I have property.
Okay, we will have, how about an annual pass?
I could do that.
But you don't go park at the parks.
Well,
Okay,
You park downtown.
I could completely skip the park.
well, no, you can just do an annual pass, like Texas Parks and Wildlife does.
Okay, can you do it where elderly people have senior citizens?
Oh, yeah, you can do that. It's like Texas Parks and Wildlife does,
Now we're getting into negotiations.
Hold on now.
New Braunfels still charges for handicap parking spaces.
But
They,
still, I mean, whatever. You can-
they don't have a,
Well, we're
Yeah.
trying to solve the
I
problem.
asked them
at
that
the
today.
parks.
But one thing I will say, we need to fast track this, guys, fast track it. If we need to, it's gonna, if we don't do it. Yeah, we don't have the money.
Gotta do.
We don't have any grants. We don't have the money right now.
Have to do.
Ms. Harper,
Okay.
Go ahead.
We're gonna table the rest of this until Sonia
Yeah.
and Jan are back so they can have some say, so we won't vote on it.
We won't vote on it.
We had an entire workshop on this already.
Yeah,
With the same members here tonight.
Yeah, I was here for it. Yeah.
okay, we'll move on to 4.7. This is something we've talked about several times. And it's about the Freeboard, so we'll let
Yeah.
Adrian tell us about this.
We're just adopting the freeboard definition from FEMA and establishing a 2-foot freeboard above the flood elevation set by FEMA for all permits within the floodplain. So special flood hazard. This is something we've talked about before. It's just going back with the ordinance written up. The
Yeah,
way we
full ordinance.
And the county follows that 2 foot, right?
Yeah, and our subdivision ordinance already has a 2-foot. This just marries the two up.
So does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, make the motion. Ordinance 2023-03-02, ordinance of the city council of the city of Martindale, Texas, raising the height requirements for the lowest floor elevation standards freeboard.
And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, hearing none.
Well, let me just ask quick. It does say floodway there or floodplain. Where's the differentiation? You mentioned floodplain, but I see floodway there.
Floodway is that crosshatch area you see on the map.
But I mean, Jared mentioned something about the floodplain, and so I don't know if this,
So
is this in the floodway or the floodplain?
these standards apply to the floodplain, anywhere with that is zoned A, AE, AH, A1 through A30, AR, VI.
General.
So it's anything that's a special flood hazard area. It's a floodplain essentially. So
Okay,
How that's applicable to Martindale, it's that 100-year floodplain.
you what?
Can't build in a floodway.
Well, it says floodway there. And
Well, you technically can build in a floodway. You
That's what
you have to jump a lot of environmental
No, we
hoops.
don't have to get into it.
Y'all talk, just don't even break that.
okay, as long as you have it there in the proclamation, in the ordinance about the AE and the E and all that, where is it there?
There.
Okay, good. Okay, no, I didn't see that lower part of the page of the ordinance, so I am out of the discussion zone now.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, so the next item could take some time. Do we want to go ahead and tackle that or go into executive session and wait until Jan and Sonia are here to listen to that presentation?
I'd rather wait on this. This is something that takes some explaining and understanding and
I've had a long day, so.
Is that
my
okay
brain
with you,
is
Andrea?
And
Okay,
we can go to executive.
so we'll
leave it an
save
hour.
that one for the next city
I don't have
council meeting
capacity
since
for
it's
much-
gonna take
much
some
right
time.
now.
Just 1 hour. That's all.
We've had some real long ones, Nick, in the past. It's nothing.
So we'll have
I don't know, it explains a lot.
a few minutes discussion and then we're gonna go into, a few minutes break. If anybody needs. Okay, so we're back in session and it's 9:03. And so, let's see, how do I word this? We discussed, under the local Texas Government Code 3341, a suit to collect a delinquent tax on a local property. So we did make a decision and I guess we can go forward with the motion.
Cool. Yeah, need to make a motion. A motion to file a lawsuit under Texas Tax Code 33.41 to foreclose on a certain property locally known as 305 FM 1979 Martindale, Texas 786.
Not to foreclose on it, but to establish a legal description for that property so that a foreclosure suit may then be filed.
To establish legal description. Let me go back on that one there. Okay, want to make a motion to file a lawsuit under Texas Tax Code 33.41.
It's not under that. So what this would be is a precursor to a lawsuit.
we're trying to capture your motion.
Under tax code 3, the motion should be a motion to file a lawsuit to establish the legal description of the property locally known as 305.
Okay, so I want to Make a motion to file a lawsuit to establish a legal description, look for a property locally known as 305 FM 1979 Martindale, Texas 78655.
Wait. I'm trying to write that
Does
down.
that sound right?
Perfect.
Okay,
Couldn't have been better if I said it myself.
and so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So you need this too.
Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries.
Nobody was here to hear this.
Yeah, I know.
Well, the
We
big
worked so hard on that.
Well, we're not there.
Oh, we had one user on Zoom.
Good. That's a big one.
Years.
Okay, is there anything to add to the list of future items?
So we're gonna discuss the parking issue.
Yes. the
Next city council.
parking Issue. We were gonna talk about Sonia had asked that we put on the agenda to discuss about stray animals, and so we could put that on there.
Can we put this as a priority, the parking fee issue,
Yeah,
discussion.
parking fee.
or put that in next meeting?
And then, of course, we'll also put on the FEMA stuff. That we need.
National Flood Insurance Program, we postponed that.
Yeah.
And as a future item, we never finished the supplemental use table. The going over of that and changing the codes or the numbers or letters on that supplemental use table. The uses, is it supplemental use table? What's it called?
Use table,
Huh?
155.96 use table.
The use table. We never finished that.
Okay,
That's all I-
anything else?
No.
Okay, I want to maintain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor, please say aye.
Hey, real quick, this Saturday is the 51st San Marcos River cleanup.
When is that starting?
Starts at, I think at 9 o'clock at, you know, where Tom's place is.
Yeah.
They're gonna do from the headwaters all the way down to Gonzales. Barbecue, they're gonna have barbecue and
Nice.
food and all that.
How's that work? You get a bunch of scuba divers out there, or?
Oh, we got bank runners, we got some scuba divers, but bank, people on the tributaries and on the bank, canoers, pick up trash. Some of you can't get to, but they'll pick up. It's a
That's
big
cool.
one. They pick up
I'm gonna be
tons.
in Houston, but I'll probably be back around like 11 or so.
Come on down.
Yeah. I'll
Actually,